Celebrating 45 years on the air, award-winning Farmweek is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, the push for renewable energy. Advocates head to Washington. Plus, as inflation ratchets even higher, food banks hit hard. Also, in a stunning reversal, the EPA says no to a flood pump system in Mississippi it promised long ago. And finally, with the big day coming up, Zac Ashmore goes off the highway at a Christmas tree farm. Farm Week starts right now. Hello everybody, I'm Mike Russell. Good to have you with us once again here on Farm Week. As we push further into colder weather, energy and its cost and reliability continuing to stay on the front burner. After a campaign promise to the contrary, the president opened part of an oil reserve in the Gulf of Mexico for drilling. Now, as the cost of gas continues to rise, and even as the automotive industry slowly moves toward electric cars, those who push for renewable energy went to Washington. Farm Week's Jonah Holland has the story.
Renewables. I must stress that the farmers, ranchers, and landowners in my district cannot supply the world's food and fiber without 24/7 access to reliable and affordable energy.
Recently, a House Ag subcommittee convened farm and energy interests to consider the relationship of renewable fuels to rural economies. This as lawmakers wrangle over the next phase in the president's domestic agenda.
As Congress debates the Build Back Better Act this week, what kind of benefits can we expect from the billion-dollar investment in biofuels infrastructure within the bill itself?
It really would unleash the power of biofuels. It gives us the ability to work with our retail partners to accelerate the market inclusion of E15, which is a lower cost, lower carbon, higher value fuel choice for consumers.
This summer, an appeals court reversed President Trump's approval of year-round E15. But lobbyists championed the Year-Round Fuel Choice Act introduced this summer. It would restore Trump's executive order. Despite a White House desire to electrify America's cars, advocates admit that realistically, most cars will run on liquid fuels through 2050. They say biofuels can bridge the gap. Supporters lauded the RFS, which led to the build-out of more than 200 biorefineries in 27 states, with a 17 billion gallon capacity, using tens of billions of dollars in domestic crops like corn annually. The committee heard about the benefits of other renewables, like solar, in conjunction with food production. Participants emphasized accountability in congressional decision-making in rural areas.
Whether it's biodiesel or increase at E15, it really boils down to resources being laser-focused and making sure that those dollars are being spent where they need to be spent.
Reporting for Farm Week, I'm Jonah Holland.
In related news, inflation and its widening effect, especially noticeable during the holidays. The cost of food dramatically higher. A Thanksgiving meal for 10 was up 14% this year to more than $53. That cost increase adds to challenges for those already struggling to make ends meet and for those who help them. Peter Tubbs reports on the inflation impact on those helping fill the ever-widening gap.
So the increase in food prices is a real challenge for meeting the needs of people who are struggling to put food on the table across the country. Our food banks are seeing prices that are 2 to 3 times what they were just 9 months ago.
The same inflation that is rippling across the economy is lowering the ability of the nation's food banks to serve the nation's hungry.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a sudden and intense surge in demand. Last year in 2020, we estimate that 60 million people access the charitable food system in this country.
Food banks that expanded their operations to meet the pandemic-induced spike in demand are now facing price spikes across their food menu. The COVID-19-driven shocks to the labor market have slung millions of households into food insecurity for the first time. Banks from Iowa to Texas held outdoor drive-up events to serve the hungry. while Shiloh Mercy House in Oakland is down from the peak of 1,100 families it was feeding each week during the height of the pandemic. 300 families still line up each Wednesday.
Yeah, our clients, they're sharing with us, that the rising food cost is something that is a huge stressor right now for them. It's something that they just can't afford.
Inflation in the food sector means families utilizing food banks may see smaller portions and fewer protein options, especially among beef, pork, chicken, and peanut butter.
I'm come here because I need food for my family. You know why? Because the stores is very expensive, the food, and my money is not enough.
Delays in global supply chains are keeping canned goods from Asia, like fruit cocktail and pears, abroad due to a lack of shipping containers. Planning around delays means buying further into the future or making larger purchases than normal.
The secret for us is really staying ahead of the pipeline. I used to commit to a purchase 6 weeks in advance of when it's actually needed, and now I've extended that lead time to perhaps 8 to 10 weeks.
Analysts believe the current inflation rate will continue well into 2022, meaning food banks will need to keep adjusting their budgets for many months ahead.
In what can only be described as a stunning reversal, the EPA now says it will not support the building of pumps in the Mississippi Delta designed to help mitigate massive flooding we covered in detail a year ago here on Farm Week. This following indications to the contrary late in 2020. In November, the EPA wrote this 30-page letter to the Army Corps of Engineers justifying its policy change, emphasizing what it describes as concern for the environment. You might remember our 6-part series on that hotly debated issue, Voices from the Flood. In that Emmy-nominated series, we spoke to longtime property owners in Mississippi's Yazoo backwater area, some of whom lost everything in a man-made flood of more than 500,000 acres, water that covered their land for months, making it virtually unfarmable and which destroyed many natural habitats. Those landowners have pushed for decades to get the government to finish a long-promised pump system, and late last year it appeared, following a delay since 2008, that the pumps would be built. Now, though, with a new party in the White House, the reversal, prompting a response from Mississippi's Ag Secretary Andy Gibson. In a statement he wrote in part, quote, "The EPA may not be able to see it from Washington, D.C., but when the South Delta floods, Mississippians see it in their fields and businesses. They feel the water in their living rooms. These floodwaters destroy Mississippi farmland and homes, roads, and businesses, and this government-created disaster destroys our wildlife and environment. Rich and poor alike suffer from this government-made problem and will continue to suffer as a result of this environmental injustice perpetuated by the Biden administration, EPA." Gibson called the reversal an atrocity and said he'll continue to fight for the pumps. Beginning Christmas week, over 2 shows will run Voices from the Flood once again. On the lighter side, horticulturist Gary Bachman takes a positive approach to the landscape even this time of year. This week, he's proud to showcase medallion winners that are beautiful to look at and tasty on the dinner table. Here's Gary.
When I'm asked about great landscape plants, I always start with the Mississippi medallion winners. Today, Southern Gardening is at Truck Crops Branch Station in Crystal Springs. Let's take a look at a few good choices. Vermillionaire Cupvia has earned its spot in my landscape. This heat-loving plant is covered from spring to fall with abundant, fiery, hot yellow, red, and orange tubular flowers. Vermillionaire Cupvia is a tender perennial in most parts of Mississippi, but can be grown as a gorgeous annual. Blew My Mind Evovulus earned Mississippi Medallion recognition in 2019. This is a prolific bloomer with individual funnel-shaped sky blue flowers. The flowers only open for one day and in the morning are brilliant, but by afternoon will be looking quite spent. But the next day, the gorgeous flowering starts all over again. Gulf Muley grass was chosen as a Mississippi Medallion native plant winner in 2010. In the fall, this native grass produces billowy masses called inflorescences, which resemble pink clouds in the landscape. There's also a white selection called White Cloud. These selections are showstoppers in the fall landscape. Collard greens were chosen in 2019 and traditionally grown in the fall through the winter and into the spring season. The large mature leaves are tough and fibrous and gives collards the reputation of taking a long time to cook. But the wait is totally worth the effort. Yum! Remember, plants receiving Mississippi Medallion recognition will be winners wherever they're planted. I'm MSU Extension Horticulture Specialist Gary Bachman, and I hope you'll join us for the next Southern Gardening.
Take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up in our Farm Week feature, before you can decorate it, light it up, or stash presents under it, you've got to find your Christmas tree. Just in time for the big day, Zac Ashmore goes off the highway at a Christmas tree farm in Amory, Mississippi, and boy, are those beauties worthy. Go behind the scenes where traditions are born and the firs, spruces, and pines grow tall. Holiday stories don't get much better than this one. That's coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm David Buys.
And I'm Katie Buys.
We know how important it is to take your health questions to experts you can trust,
who offer answers based on science.
The science shows that the COVID vaccine is safe and effective at preventing the disease. Hundreds of millions of people have received the vaccine so far with very few side effects.
But choosing to delay getting the vaccine increases the chance that COVID will spread. When it spreads, it mutates or develops variants. And we're seeing that variants can be even more dangerous than the original virus.
Getting the vaccine is a personal decision. And when you choose to get it, you're protecting yourself, your family, and your neighbors. You're also protecting the most vulnerable people who can't take the vaccine. People being treated for cancer or organ transplants, people with serious illnesses, and small children. So get the answers you need.
And get the vaccine.
You'll be a hero.
Hi, I'm Jonah Holland, and I'm a communication major at Mississippi State University. As a college student, I'm young and generally pretty healthy. I try to take care of myself, but the coronavirus, especially the Delta variant, doesn't care about that. It's putting both young and healthy people alike in the hospital, not just older, sicker people. The best defense we have is the COVID-19 vaccine, and the first one has just received full approval from the FDA. Billions of people around the world have received it, and the science shows it is safe and effective. Right now, in Mississippi, more than 85% of people in the hospital with COVID are unvaccinated. 85%. Think about that. So don't wait. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist, get the facts you need, and get the vaccine. You'll be a hero.
Time for the market report. Zac Ashmore, always Johnny on the spot with his insight. Zac?
Thanks, Mike. Markets slightly down last week, except row crops, still trending upward overall despite some slight falls in price. General market fluctuations. Let's take a look. Last week's biggest loss, lumber down about $32, but that's following a big rise the previous week. Last week's biggest gain, corn up 21 cents, continuing a 6-week trend. If this keeps on, we'll see it reach $6 a bushel. Quite a price. So we've been talking about supply chain issues a lot lately, and for good reason. It has effects on the economy, ag included. Market analysts Ernie Goss and Chris Robinson give us the rundown.
Everybody's talking about it as supply chain disruptions, of course, and it's true for agriculture, true for farming, true for both the inputs on the outputs for agriculture. So it's a big issue. Our sentiment index was down significantly, even as the economy, the rural Main Street economy, is continuing to expand. This part of the country, if you look at what's going on in this part of the country, you're talking about GDP, we're back above pre-pandemic levels, but when you look at the jobs, we're still 3% below what we had in pre-pandemic levels, and that's true for Iowa, that's true for the states that we survey, whether it's Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota. Almost all the states are still below pre-pandemic levels.
You have disruptions and obviously shutting down the economy. That was something we'd never done before, and that's when you saw crude oil drop to actually negative. Going back to then, we had never gone below about $9.40. That was back in 1986. So that historically, that was unusual. But yeah, you also saw a huge jump this year, really in the past year, in natural gas. Natural gas went from $1.50 to $6.50 just vertically, and that's demand driven, and that's really negatively impacted farmers and producers because the fertilizer prices have doubled, and I think that's going to be something that's going to be not going to be fixed quickly, and it's going to impact the acres that are planted this year.
As we've seen, row crops trending upward. Supplies are reason among many, especially in wheat. Once again, Chris Robinson breaks it down for us.
We've known about the wheat issue really for the past 3 or 4 USDA reports. You can go back and look, especially for the high protein wheat. And it was ebbs and flow, but you saw that big move, especially with Minneapolis spring wheat. That's what led us up. Now you've got Chicago and KC at 8-year highs. And you're starting to see the money start to chase it. You've got money managers coming in and they see that because, when you're at 8-year highs, it's like, all right, they want to get in on this game. It's an inflation hedge. People want to own physical assets. But wheat, out of all the grains, wheat actually has a really bullish story because there's not enough supply. And even though Australia had a very good crop this year, they're having problems with being too wet. So they're concerned about that. Every day we come to work, we always wait for Russia to say when they're going to start eliminating or dialing back their exports. So that's always something to keep watching. But I look at it this way: if you're a wheat producer, these are great. It's a great opportunity. The best prices in 8 years. We all have seen how volatile these markets can be in the past, certainly a year and a half. And that's the other thing. We're coming out of the previous 7 years where we didn't have a whole lot of volatility. We were kind of flat. We had a trading range market. Things completely got reset with 2020. So I don't play the game of saying it can't go here, it can't go there. All I know is you've got an opportunity. In the last 6 weeks alone, wheat's gained almost $2. 2022, you kind of have a disconnect between old crop corn and new crop corn. New crop corn is trending higher. It made a new contract high today at $560, $570. So that market's already out there buying those acres. And if you're a producer, if you haven't looked at 2022 next year, those are really good prices. And again, setting a hedge or making a cash sale, you're not locking in that. You can manage that risk after the sale. A hedge doesn't mean you're calling the top. You just don't want to wake up and say, hey, we had a $1.50 rally here. We did nothing about it. We just lost half of it. We could have done something. So that's the key. Our beans are more expensive than South America. South America, even with sending it to China, it's less expensive than our beans. So that's a factor holding against us. They've planted a huge crop in South America. So far, there hasn't been a weather issue. I know this is La Nina year, and everybody's hoping and looking for a possibility of a drought issue to drive prices higher. Nothing like that's coming out of there yet. So you've also seen that, I think, with the Chinese buying. They've kind of been folding their arms. They've kind of been waiting. They bought a little bit when we were at 9-month lows last week, but they're waiting to see what happens with South America as well. And that's key. So I think that the fact with the U.S. dollar being at 1.5-year highs certainly doesn't help our exports. But I think the bigger thing is what happens with the supply in South America.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Holidays approaching and prices still rising. We'll see how things continue. Mike?
Thank you, Zach. Now for a little fun while we get off the highway at the same time. Christmas just weeks away, but it just wouldn't be a Feliz Navidad without the perfect tree. But where to get one and how do they grow them? Here's Zac Ashmore with all of the answers again and just a little bit more.
Welcome to Off the Highway, a show where we explore hidden gems all across the state of Mississippi that you ought to know about. I'm your host, Zac Ashmore, and today we're headed to the Worthy Christmas Tree Farms outside of Amory, Mississippi. Come on and join me. Welcome to Worthy Christmas Tree Farm, a few miles outside of Amory in Monroe County, Mississippi. This place is one of many agritourism locations across the state. Let's go check it out. Christmas tree farms are a good way to help you get into the spirit of the season. Picking out the perfect tree while it's still in the ground might be one of the oldest traditions there is. Mr. Lowell Worthy's been co-owner of the farm since the beginning.
There were some friends of ours that had opened a farm originally, and so we started, which I started working for them when I was probably 14, 13 years old. And then once they decided to retire, they asked my family if we would like to kind of take it over. So we started planting our trees here 5 years prior to their retirement, and that way we could be ready. So once they closed in 2010, we opened our farm in 2011.
Of all the varieties of tree they grow out here, the two most common are Leland cypress and Murray cypress. And as you can see, they grow them nice and big. The farm also imports Fraser firs from North Carolina to sell as pre-cut trees. One of the interesting things I learned here was that Christmas tree farms tend to work together.
We have the Southern Christmas Tree Association, and it actually compelled of, say, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And so we have 3 states that's kind of in our convention, and all of us share our information, and we try to help each other. If someone moving into an area, they'll send folks to me, or I do the same way.
If you're like me and have never gotten a Christmas tree straight from the farm, they like to make it easy for you with a simple process. They give you a tag to place on the tree, which reserves it for you. Then you tear off the bottom of the tag and return it to them. They'll get you your tree and deliver it to your car. While you're waiting for your tree, the farm has plenty of family-friendly activities. They even have Charlie Brown. Good grief.
It takes a while to process the trees and go out to the fields and pick them out and cut them down and bring them up. So yes, we do have like an area like for jumpies, things like that for the kids to play on. We have some swings for the parents to sit. We have some horses to feed, and a lot of things that the kids can do kind of while we wait, and that's what we try to do to kind of have a way to kind of pass the time.
Christmas is not the only holiday they celebrate on the farm. Prior, they have a corn maze and pumpkin patch. The business of agritourism doesn't apply to just one season. The same thing goes for raising Christmas trees. Growing time varies based on how big you want it to be.
We start planting just right after that we, cut the last tree. We start planting for the next year. We have to fertilize, we have to put out, we have to plant the trees in, February and March. Every tree has to be shaped twice a year. We have to worry about, fungus, insects.
Christmas tree farming is a year-round business. It's going to take a few years for this little guy to grow to size. You're going to be great. I know it. When they first started the farm, Mr. Worthy needed some advice on how to ensure healthy growth of the trees. He reached out to the Extension Service, and they were there for him.
The local guy does come out here some. He's a friend of mine, and they try to help us with different things. They have an app that he showed me this past year that you can actually tell the soil around your trees. So he helped me a lot, kind of showing me the places that I should work on with fertilizing, things like that.
The farm has another feature, a gift shop and event area. Many farms across the state have begun doing this to take advantage of the rural beauty of their surroundings. People like being able to soak in the charming countryside. This is Sparky. He's sort of the unofficial mascot of the place. He's the first thing you see when you walk into the gift shop. It's his job to sit here and make you feel welcome. And you most certainly did. You made me feel very special. You might have noticed that the tree behind me looked like it had been snowed on. It's not a fake. That tree was grown at the farm, and they used a process called flocking to give it that appearance.
Flocking is kind of a wood-based powder, and so we mix that with water, and so that actually sticks to the tree. So it looks like a heavy snowfall once we get done with it.
I should point out that flocking is a biodegradable process. The flakes are wood-based, and the adhesive dissolves in water. They told me that if you left the tree out in the rain, the flocking would melt away. The shop showcases not only what the farm can do, but what other crafters within the local community can make too. The gift shop is a prime example of a community pulling their skills together to create something truly special. Like this candle, which was made by a local lady out of Amory, Mississippi. Seriously, that candle smelled awesome. You know, I found this particular farm online through mschristmastrees.com and through visitmississippi.org. These are great resources to help you find unique places to visit across the state. When it comes to visiting Christmas tree farms, you'll find they have plenty of traditions.
Christmas tree farms are kind of made of traditions and things like that. The families do the same thing kind of every year. They go and they eat at a certain restaurant kind of while they're coming, and then got a certain way they do things every year. So that's kind of special when a family can come out and spend time together, and I'm glad to be a part of that.
Worthy Christmas Tree Farm is one of many Christmas tree farms all across the state of Mississippi. You ought to look online to find one close to you. Well, that's it for this week. But if you know of any places I ought to know about that are off the highway, send me a line. Who knows? Maybe next time I'll be off the highway in your hometown. Until then, take care.
He does the markets, ladies and gentlemen, but no one does the holidays like Zac Ashmore. And speaking of the holidays, we have a delicious story for you. This time of year, pumpkin's a big part of our holiday tradition, but there's a lot more to those big orange globes than you might think, and not all of them are orange. We're headed to Morton, Illinois, the pumpkin capital of the world. There, the land of Lincoln is clobbering second-place California by almost $500 million. It's classic Americana, just in time for pumpkin pie. Next time on Farm Week, we hope you'll join us. Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching.